So, a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while is about one of my favorite actors and actresses, and that's Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Now, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn were a famous on screen duo that had a quote unquote secret, uh, I would say, relationship and whatnot for about 26 years. And that all developed during their time making movies. But before I get into that, so yesterday I did a poll about a new segment I'm going to be adding to live streams starting next week. And that will be really short animated reviews for animated shorts. And we had several choices for names. So I had really old shorts, really old cartoons, really old tunes, and really old animation. And the winner, based on the poll, is really old tunes. And so the way that's going to look is going to be about 30 seconds or less review of an animated short from like Looney Tunes, Disney, Tom and Jerry, kind of that era of animation. And then those will be clipped and put onto Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and potentially TikTok if I'm brave enough to do that. I don't know if I really like TikTok or not. But just wanting to add other ways of expanding kind of the show a bit, but also to kind of showcase animation history and animated shorts as well, because I really love animation. And so that's that. And now we'll get back to this. So I call this the Hepburn Tracy cinematic universe, just because they did so many movies together, more so than a lot of movie series are. So I think it's really cool to kind of talk about that. Originally, I was going to do a video about it last year, but I just never found the time or whatnot to do so. But now I'm going to do that today. And hopefully in future shows, like I'm wanting to do one about Clark Gable, because Clark Gable had a lot of the same leading ladies. So I'd call it Gable's Gals. That will be the next kind of show like this, where I talk about movies he did with those different actresses. And so with that, let's get started talking about Hepburn and Tracy Cinematic Universe. So from their Wikipedia page that they shared together, they were a legendary cinematic couple, both off and on the screen. They starred in 9 films and had an open secret affair in Hollywood that lasted 26 years, ending just with Tracy's death in 1967. And so I'm going to be discussing all of those films and ranking them in order of what I think was the worst to the best. And let me just name you all 9 of these films in order of when they were released, not in order of my opinion. First being Woman of the Year from 1942, Keeper of the Flame from 1942, Without Love 1945, Sea of Grass 1947, State of the Union 1948, Adam's Rib 1949, Patton Mike 1952, Desk Set 1957, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner 1967, the last film Spencer Tracy made, because I believe he died, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks after completion of filming. And so, yeah, that one is his last movie, pretty much ever, and the last one they did together. And so with that, let's move on to the first film, what I think is the worst of the bunch. All right. So number 9 is Without Love from 1945. I gave a 2.5 out of 5. I thought it was such a weird and crazy movie. It has the issue if it wants to either be a full-on comedy or full-on drama, but to me, it doesn't succeed at being either. And it's just so weird. Like Spencer Tracy, right? He's this military guy who's trying to hide, and he's in Katharine Hepburn's basement, and he's making these weird robot and rocket designs for, I think he's in the Air Force or something like that. It was really strange, and I don't have it pictured here, but there's a really funny costume that she has to wear later on. It's like a big old cathode ray tube on her head. It looks really strange. So yeah, non-existent plot. Things randomly happen, but Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn had great chemistry in this film. They always do. This is just a really odd film, and I think the worst of the bunch. All right, looks like we got some comments here. Not a Fed. I think the really old short's name is funnier, but still sounds cool. I particularly love those tunes from way back then that were like Home of the Future stuff. Then how did he die? He had cancer. I believe it was, I want to say stomach or throat cancer. Let me check that real quick. But I'm pretty sure he died of cancer. How did Spencer Tracy die? He had a heart attack. That's crazy. but not surprising. I mean, a lot of people back in those days drank a lot and smoked a lot, so it's probably from that. Which is a shame though, because he wasn't very old. I want to say, let's see, he was only 67. He wasn't that old. But when you watch Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, he looks really old in it. So I just think the different substances caught up with him. But yeah, anyways, that's Without Love. That's, to me, the worst one they did. So let's move on to number 8. And speaking of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, it's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie. Nothing to do with the subject matter. I actually think it's really awesome and poignant. They're talking about interracial relationships, which were very contentious back then. I just think if people nowadays would watch this movie, they would see, holy cow, we've come a long way since all of this has happened. That's not necessarily why I didn't like the movie. I don't know. I wasn't really convinced with the relationship. It seemed a little rushed to me. And I don't know. I liked Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, but they seemed really on the back burner, even though they're the top billed cast here, other than Sidney Poitier, of course. But they're really hardly in the film. It's mostly about the relationship. I don't know. I wasn't the biggest fan of the movie. But again, I think the subject matter is great and all that. But if you take that away from it, if you just think about it as a movie as a whole, it's not super great. But definitely one I think people should watch still. Yeah, it's better than cancer. Yeah, either heart attack or cancer. Those are your choices, right? Yeah. But I gave it a 4 out of 5. I mean, that's not a terrible score. And you'll see with these next few films here, I actually had a hard time compiling this list because I liked so many of them. It was really deciding which one do I like more versus the other, versus which one was worse than the other, because they're all really good movies, which is very rare, I think, to where you have so many movies with the same cast. You would think after a while, well, they're going to start being terrible, right? But no, it just seemed they kept getting better and better. With the exception of this one, I wasn't the biggest fan. All right, let's move on to number 7, which is Woman of the Year from 1942, which is actually their first film they did together. I thought they were really good together. They had great chemistry. You could tell they really liked each other. And I want to say this is the movie where they started their affair that lasted 26 years. And I think this is a really good example of a proto rom-com. We didn't really have rom-coms the way we do today just yet. More of the screwball kind of funny comedies versus straight romance. This is kind of a beginning of the romance. But the reason why they're fighting isn't for a silly reason. You know, the reason they're fighting is because they have a lack of communication, and she shows a lack of interest in his work, right? So I think that's kind of an interesting thing that a lot of couples and whatnot can relate to, and is a good relationship film. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5. I really liked it. But like I said, this was a really hard time. I had a really hard time organizing which ones I like more over the other. And the only real critique I had of the movie was there's the ending scene where it just drags on, and I do think they fall in love a little bit too easily. I mean, yes, it's kind of growing over time, their relationship, but it does feel a bit rushed. But again, their acting is so good that you could kind of see past that. And that's why I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Because I thought it was really good. But of the next few films, I think this is one I'll probably rewatch the least. All right, let's move on to number 6. So their number 6, or my number 6 rather, is The Sea of Grass from 1947. This is a Western film that they did together. I thought it was a very touching and deep film. It's not a comedy at all. But the only thing I really didn't like is I do think it should have been a lot shorter. I want to say it's like a little over 2 hours. It's a very long and drags on for a bit film. And we don't really see Katharine Hepburn near the end of the film, and she's the star. You know, I wanted to see more of her, but we barely see her. We see a lot of Spencer Tracy, but we really spend a lot of time, the last, I want to say, 10 or 15 minutes with their kids. And I would have liked to see more of Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. That's what I'm there for. I don't care about these other kids, or their relationships. But other thing I'll add, this is similar to Gone in the Wit. This is similar to Gone with the Wind in regards to the drama and the type of story. So get your tissue boxes ready. It's pretty depressing, dramatic film, but it's one that you have to be in the mindset to watch. It's not one that you could just pop on and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to watch Sea of Grass. No, it's a very depressing film. I mean, they have a very strained relationship. They're fighting all the time. And it's not a fun movie. It's like Gone with the Wind, a pretty depressing film, but a really good one. And another one I gave a 4.5 out of 5. But I'd have to be in the mindset to watch it. I'm not going to watch it all the time. So that's The Sea of Grass. All right, the next film is, takes a second to load here, Patton Mike from 1952. This is a great movie. I had a really fun time with this one. I love the scenes where Katharine Hepburn is playing tennis and golf and all the different sports. And from my understanding, she was actually a really good athlete. And so this was a way to kind of show off her skills, not just as an actress, but also as a tennis player. So I thought that was pretty cool. And they had great chemistry as always. He was kind of like her, I would say, her coach. And then he kind of fall in love and all that. It's a really cute story, and I really liked it. And I had a lot of fun with it. I think this is a good film later in their career to kind of showcase that they still really liked each other. Again, you could still see their chemistry on screen. All right. My number 4 film is a Frank Capra film called State of the Union from 1948. I loved this movie. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was really fun to see Spencer Tracy running for president. I think that's a really interesting storyline. Very poignant because this year's a presidential election year. So this film, I think people should definitely watch this year. And kind of like how Sea of Grass is kind of more of a Katharine Hepburn film, this film is more of a Spencer Tracy film. It's more of his than it is a duo film, but they're in it together, right? They're husband and wife. They have great chemistry. And this film, like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is another Frank Capra film, this shows what I'm sure goes on in DC for real for the Republican and Democratic campaigns. It's kind of crazy. The stuff he has to go through, the different interviews, because I can't remember, he's like a union leader of, I can't remember exactly what his profession is, but he's not a politician at all. So he's, starting from basically rags to riches, trying to run for president. So it's a pretty interesting and pretty poignant storyline, but I recommend checking it out. And what I love about these movies in particular, and they did a couple more like this one, is they kind of showed that Republicans and Democrats can get along as friends and family. Like we don't have to fight with each other all the time. We don't have to hate each other, right? This is a great movie, I think, showcasing that. And what I love too, I'm pretty sure they don't say what party he's running for. So I think anybody could watch and apply this. Same with Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, another great Frank Capra film. You can apply it either way. Looks like we got a comment here. Not a Fed. Love the art style in these movies. Any idea what medium it was done in, i.e. color, pencil, paint, etc.? I'm not entirely sure. Just like looking at this poster here, I think they got actual photos and maybe colored on top of them, like maybe traced over them. I'm not sure, though. That would be a good question to ask, though, and try to figure out. My guess would be color pencil, maybe charcoal, and maybe some type of airbrushing. It is a really cool style that I think is kind of a lost art that I think we should get back into. Everything nowadays is just photos, and that gets so tiresome. But a lot, and back in these days, they either drew it or drew over it, by hand. So anyway, back to this film. It's a good movie, and I think a really good film to watch this, especially this presidential season. All right, the next film, pull back up here. My number 3 is Keeper of the Flame from 1942. So I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And like I said, it was so hard to decide. But this one I decided to put as my number 3 because this is one I want to rewatch over and over again. I think it's a great film noir. I haven't seen too many Spencer Tracy films where he's a film noir detective, and he's perfect for it. He's got the gruff look, he's got the tough voice. He does great narration of this. It was a really, really good movie. And I think it's a great story of how sometimes heroes could be corrupted, but they could be saved by the end still, too. Like, it's not the end of the world. If you're a fan of Captain America Winter Soldier, this is the movie for you. This is a movie about espionage, about, deception and whatnot from the government. This is a really excellent movie for that. And I also love that Katharine Hepburn's character, she ends up being the real hero. And I love Spencer Tracy's monologue at the end of the film where he talks about the people need the truth no matter how terrible it is. We're not children. We can handle it. We can handle the truth, right? This is a great film. And I think is pretty applicable to today. It really is, man. So many of their movies do, man. We got another comment here. Spicy 4K action. What's up, Harrison? What's up, man? Thanks for coming by. Yeah, just talking about the Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn films. And this one, Keeper of the Flame, is a really, really good film noir. I recommend checking out. All right. We're in the top 2. So my number 2 film is Desk Set from 1957. I loved this movie. I, like all these other ones, could be applicable to today. So in this film, there's a group of researchers in a company who people would call their office and they would go to their book. They would check out, they'd help check out from their library and all of that, all the knowledge that they would need. Like people would say, what's the capital of, I don't know, France, right? And they'd say Paris. I'm like, okay, thank you. Like they're basically what we use today for Google search. But these were real people, doing the research and all of that. And Spencer Tracy's character, or Katharine Hepburn's in charge of that department. Spencer Tracy's coming in to sell a computer that they initially think is to take the place of their jobs. And the reason why I say this is applicable to today is that this is where we are with AI. AI is here to take a lot of the jobs. A lot of people are trying to sell it. But I think, like the premise of this movie, we can actually apply it more than it'll replace us. Because at the end of the movie, these characters, they don't actually lose their jobs. They're the ones who actually end up inputting all the data into the computer so that when people call their department, they could type in the results and give it to the people right then and there. They don't have to wait a few weeks. They don't have to wait for books to come in. They could give it to them right then and there. I actually think ChatGPT could be the same thing, or it could lead to Skynet, whichever comes first. But I really think this film is actually a good one for today, is that we shouldn't be afraid of technology and try to use it. Use it as a tool for good and use it as a tool to help improve our lives rather than replace our lives. But back to Hepburn and Tracy, I think they're great. All the other cast is great. And it's actually a really fun movie about some pretty serious topic about how technology comes along and replaces jobs. It's a pretty scary thought. We can handle the truth. Never a less true statement in modern society. I know, but we need it, man. Spicy 4K action. I've literally only seen Summertime for Katharine Hepburn films. Need to watch a lot more. Well, I recommend checking out the ones with her and Spencer Tracy. They're, to me, some of their best movies because they have great relationship, great on-screen chemistry. So I recommend you check those ones out if you want a good start. Just this list here, and I'll name them off at the end again. Just an idea of which ones to check out from them. All right. So speaking of that, let's move on to the number 1. So the number one is Adam's Rib from 1945 or 49, excuse me. I gave this a 5 out of 5. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So in this movie, Hepburn and Tracy, they're playing attorneys, and they decide to take on the same case where the husband is the prosecution and the wife is the defense. And I think it's a great movie. Yeah, it's about what some would call today like social justice, with women's rights and whatnot and fighting for equality. But the core of the film that I really loved was that it's a story of how it's okay to have differing opinions even within the same household. Like I said, they're husband and wife. They're kind of fighting against each other in a way, but also it's grown their relationship by the end of it. And again, this is a film I think that's relevant for today, where it's okay to have different opinions. It's okay if you're a liberal. It's okay if you're a conservative. I don't know about communists, but no, right? But it's okay. The only way we could survive as a country is if we learn to live with each other. And this movie, to me, yes, it's a comedy. Yes, it's funny. But to me, is a great way of showing, no, we could get along. Even a joke at the end of it was they were deciding to run for senator. He is a Republican. And then she said, okay, well, I'll run as the Democrat. So they're running against each other. I don't know, it's just a cute, fun film and a harmless way of showing we can get along. I think that's important. So I'm off my soapbox now, but glad the subtitle rings true. LOL. Yep. Exactly. Yep. But anyways, those are the Hepburn Tracy films in the Hepburn Tracy cinematic universe. I recommend checking all of them. And let me bring back up the list again so you could kind of see the names of the films. We got Woman of the Year from 1942, Keeper of the Flame from 1942, Without Love from 1945, Sea of Grass 47, State of the Union 1948, Adam's Rib from 1949, and that's my personal favorite, Patton Mike from 1952, Desk Set from 57, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner from 1967. So these are all great films to get started, just watching old movies and getting interested in them. And what I love about old movies is because there were so few actors and actresses and directors, it's pretty easy to see a good chunk of them just by focusing on different actors and actresses. And that's what I tried to do here, was trying to showcase some great movies from people who collaborated a lot. And like I said, this is a series I'm going to keep going on for who knows how long. The next one probably won't be for a while, just because of how many movies I have to watch for it. But I want to talk about Clark Gable and his leading ladies, because he worked with a lot of the same actresses. And I'll call that series Gable's Gals, where he was with, Joan Crawford, Jean Harlow. There's a couple more. I can't think of them right now. But there was like 4 or 5 actresses he worked with and did like 5 or 6 movies with. So my goal is to get through all of those. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.